we have discovered much older Greek manuscripts. So we have better manuscripts, more reliable, much earlier manuscripts, loads of them, much better. So we now have a much better idea of what's in original Greek manuscripts now. It's not Erasmus's fault, we just didn't have them. We discovered, for example, the most famous one of all, the Codex Sinaiticus in the British Library, just over there. You can visit it now and see it for free. It's amazing. It's the most precious, priceless biblical manuscript on earth. It's the earliest New Testament Bible in the world. It's there, and we own it in Britain. We actually bought it off the Russians because there's a Russian Revolution, and they sold it to us. The Russian Revolution was a bunch of atheists; they didn't believe in God, so they charged us, some rich people at the earth, for like 20 million quid or something. And there was public subscription. There was a public request for money to pay for this donations, and it was all the money was raised amazingly, and the Bolsheviks, the Russians, the communists sold this Bible to us, and we've got it in our library now. So that is now the oldest New Testament manuscript on earth. Yeah? And so King James Version knew nothing, the translation knew nothing about this, neither did Erasmus. So now we know a better idea what the Testament text looks like than the King. So when I say the King James Version, there's some people around, some Christians around, the King James Version is the authentic translation of the Bible. Well, not really. It might have been in the 16th century, but not today. The version this gentleman has here, the New Revised Standard Version, is in my view the best translation, and is used mostly in universities and academics is a very good translation, based on the best of those manuscripts. It's not obviously biased either towards a particular view. There's some translations like the NIV, which are evangelical translations. And I can tell you how they produce certain spins on words. But this one is translation is admired for its excellent quality. So I'm very pleased that he's using it. But translations are always being done anew. So what do you, from that, what is God saying to Moses about how difficult or easy it is to obey the law?
Right, so in the context of it, it seems to be mostly about obeying the decrees about idolatry, right? And so it's really about God is telling them specifically dealing with idolatry, right? And I brought you in this land, the reason I brought you in this land is because before that was idolatry. So if you come into this land, right?
I think
you become an idolater.
I think you misread that. It's not talking about idolatry.
Why would I put it in context, right? It is talking about
it's talking about the whole of the Jewish law.
When you read it there, it says, so I have before you
this is exactly the same.
if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, I command you today by loving the Lord your God, walking in his
If you go back to the beginning of chapter 30, when all these things happen to you, the blessings, it talks about then the law, the commandments of God that God is giving Moses that day. These commandments are the commandments of the Torah.
But if your heart turns away and you do not hear, but are led astray, and bow down to other
You go back
gods,
before that, in chapter 29, he is renewing the covenant. The covenant is renewed at Moab. The covenant is the agreement between God and Israel based on the law. It's not just about
specifically.
It says this book of the
law.
law.
Specifically, he's talking about idolatry. Right?
No, he's not.
So,
if you look at the context here, it's talking about this book of the law.
And then when you read the whole thing, right, he's specifically talking about.
Where does it say idolatry? Quote me the verse.
So
Quote me the verse. Quote me the verse.
So when you finish that right here,
Quote me the
across
verse.
the other side, and so you see, I said before, your day like the prosperity, death, and adversity.
Where is
if
this
you
verse?
obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I'm commanding you today by loving the Lord your God, walking in his ways, and observing the commandments, decrees, and ordinances, then you shall live and become numerous, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to possess. But if your heart turns away and do not hear, but are led astray and bow down to other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall perish. You shall not live long in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess, right? So specifically,
about idolatry.
Specifically, he's talking about idolatry.
If you look
because
here,
because he says if you do
That's an example.
this specific thing, idolatry, if you become idolaters like the people before you, then you will perish, right?
It's talking about much more than
he's
that.
saying this is
Let me explain to you.
This is something that
Can I speak without you interrupting for a second?
Well,
can I speak? You're interrupting me.
Go ahead.
God says to Moses about obeying the Lord. So the Lord your God you should obey the Lord your God, observing all his commandments that I'm commanding you today. All of them. This is in chapter 30, the very chapter I referred you to.
Yeah,
It does not say only. No, you're interrupting me again. All right? It does not specify
The ones
the
that I'm
idolatry.
commanding
You're
you
interrupting
today.
me again. Yeah. Now, because this is the covenant renewed at Moab. This is where God renews the giving of the Torah, and he talks about all the curses written in this book. It talks about the law of the book, in this book of the law. The book of the law is the Torah, verse 21, verse 21. So he's not narrowing it down to any particular passage. It's a renewal of God's covenant with Israel. So I think you're quite mistaken to think.
It's just what you said.
think
What was that when you quoted there? That he says
Verse
the
21.
laws that I'm quoting today. He says, right? So it is specific, right?
No,
to
no,
that.
no. He's saying he's talking about that by observing his commandments and decrees that are written in this book of the law. It's not just a particular
Today,
law.
if you follow these, you're the one that just read it, right? He's got it recorded that you said that before the law, the ones that I'm talking about today,
No, he says-
specifically, right? So he's talking about these ones
When you
today,
obey the Lord
because
your when you obey the Lord
when
your
you
God,
get to-
observing his commandments and decrees that are written in this book of the law. It doesn't restrict them.
What
It's
was
the-
that part you're reading? You
Well,
said
keep
that
on
it was the
over
one-
and over again. It's the same verse. I told you.
But
verse
because it's
10.
the one that you
Verse
said,
10.
it's like-
he's not restricting it to certain
The ones that
particular
I'm
laws.
giving you today, right? Specifically, when you read the whole of it, getting down to this part, right? If you do these things, but if you go in there, right? He's talking about idolatry because he says right here, right? Specifically, if you go in and start being idolaters, then yes, then you will perish.
He
right?
says here, I've
So
set before you
it's
today.
more specifically about being
Your
an
reading
idolatry,
is
right?
unprecedented. I've read lots of commentaries on this, Jewish commentaries.
Right.
No one's ever said this before.
This is a fresh one.
You are coming up with a completely a new reading. It's not justified by this. It's talking about the law of God itself, how it's been renewed
When you
at
read the whole
covenant.
thing through, it's obviously he's
No,
talking
it's
about
not.
idolatry.
It's not just. It's talking about other things. It says, "I am commanding you today to observe all His commandments, decrees, ordinances, that you shall live rather, and become numerous, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land. But if you turn away, etc., I call heaven and earth against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses." This is the same passage I referred you to. So choose
Because the
life.
whole thing's about idolatry. They will do this because
It
they
says all
abandoned-
the commandments of
Look,
the
this is
law.
how they abandoned it, specifically the
I
covenant of the
disagree with your
Lord,
reading of
the God of your ancestors, which He made with them when He brought them out of the land of Egypt. They turned and served other gods, worshiping them, gods whom had not known and whom He had not allotted to them. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against the land, bringing on it every curse written in the book. The Lord uprooted them from their land in anger, fury, and great wrath, and cast them into another land, as is now the case. The secret things belong to the Lord your God, but the revealed things belong to us, to our children forever. So it's like, it's all through that. Specifically, he's talking about idolatry. Right?
No, he's before that. He's talking about the whole book of the law and all the commandments. Say, observe all the commandments. Nowhere does he command earlier on to just obey